All right, everyone, chill. The new ice age has begun. The age where ice is actually doing its job. This is precisely what people voted for. This is Trump's mandate ever since he won the elections of November 2024. And a lot of people are not having it. They can't stomach it, especially the left, which is protesting it and tries to disrupt the country, the US, and basically the entire world, or the entire West, I should say. So we have a long chain of events that spiraled out of control and have reached a sort of generalized chaos, and this has led to several physical fighting as well as political fighting. And we are going to talk about these events right now. So on the 7th of June, LAPD issued a statement and said that today demonstrations across the city of LA remain peaceful. We commend all those who exercise their First Amendment rights responsibly. And while today's events concluded without incident, the Los Angeles Police Department remains fully prepared to respond swiftly. Now, that didn't happen. Why did these riots take place? Well, ICE was doing its job. Its job led to the detention of 12 people who were illegal migrants, and they were held into custody. And then several people protested outside several buildings associated to the federal government, but also to the state, LAPD headquarters, for instance. And at some point, they turned violent. Let's see here. We have footage from it. We have here people hiding behind cupboards, using their shields. A lot of Mexican flags. There are many Mexican flags.
I thought we were in Mexico there for a moment. Really, I was just looking at the graffiti too.
This is definitely fiery. It doesn't seem to be peaceful. Just saying. Now let's see more what happened. There are several cries and calls to spread this chaos throughout the country. And I think that when people echo such sentiments, there should be a very swift response on behalf of the authorities, and they establish order, full stop. No, there's no other consideration that is relevant there. These kinds of sentiments are incredibly disruptive, and they should be addressed. Right, so it seems like Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass, the mayor of LA, have lost control. And they are trying to protest against Trump, who is deploying the National Guard. They're saying that this is an abuse of authority, and we can handle the situation. Now, they are able to do so. They don't seem to be under control of the situation. You see here, lots of people being on top of a bridge.
I'm throwing bricks. Is that bricks and rocks and stuff like that? So that doesn't look like peaceful, according to the Chief of Police of LA County. I mean, that seems to me like, I don't know, are they having a cup of coffee with them? Are they throwing them down a bagel?
More fiery than peaceful.
Yeah.
You see them also throwing rocks to the police.
Yep.
So it seems like this has spiraled out of control. And I don't understand why Newsom would be against the deployment of the National Guard.
What's the definition of control here? Is it control just means that you allow anyone who disagrees with a Republican president and ICE who are on doing their jobs, but because it's opposed to our view, this is the form of control that's acceptable, throwing bricks, attacking police officers. But of course, if they didn't do it, then we could sit down and have a bagel with them.
I think there's a clear distinction between peaceful protest and violent riots. Democrats are paying lip service to it, but essentially they are trying to sugarcoat what is going on.
There's a political logic to it there, which is that if they make every attempt at enforcing immigration laws very expensive for the authorities, then they hope that deters the authorities, and that forces them into a political settlement. The dimension you want to keep in mind is that a lot of resources and at least House seats are allocated based on the size of the population. So if you shrink the size of the illegal immigrant population, that means that states that are currently run by Democrats will have less seats in the House.
That's an interesting point. I mean, I hadn't really put that into the kind of political dimension for them. But it is kind of like throwing it out from their perspective. oh, look, and I've seen the videos. There's nothing problematic about this. We're allowed to have demonstrations, and I think we're in agreement with that. But it's the idea that they're taking peaceable people away from their jobs. Well,
Yes.
are they?
And they're closing down roads.
Yeah.
And so they're attacking the police, and they're communists, and you see Palestinian flags, and you see Mexican flags, and you see all kinds of other foreign flags.
Yeah.
The logic behind it is we will not tolerate this loss of power.
Yeah.
And you have to think about it in the longer term, because when illegal migrants have children under American law, these children are automatically citizens.
Yes.
And if they tend to vote Democrat, that means that over time you're changing the nature of politics in the United States to favor one party.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, and we should add on the political dimension that some states are resisting voter ID laws. And last time I checked, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, also protested these voter ID laws as racist.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, if we throw this into the mix, we get a better idea as to why Gavin Newsom and the Democrats are protesting against ICE's operation.
there's one more point to make here. California makes it illegal to check the ID of a voter.
Yeah.
So if you as a voter try to show a California elections official your ID, he or she cannot examine it by law.
And they have the nerve to talk about political legitimacy and
Yes.
concerns. Now, we see also here anti-deportation rioters smashing the LAPD headquarters.
That's calm, isn't it? I can see the calmness in that way that the arm is thrusting there very calmly into the window. According to the people.
This reminds me, Escape from Los Angeles, the sequel to Escape from New York. We're going to have the Duke coming here now to
Yeah.
happens, and people have been talking about generalized chaos and the Mad Max universe. Now, speaking of flags, as we said, and as you said for us, you see lots of Palestinian flags, lots of Mexican flags, some people wrapped around in flags of the USSR, but you don't see American flags in support. You see American flags being burned and spit at. So we see here a video by Andino. He says far left and Mexican nationalist rioters are breaking into cars in Los Angeles and setting them on fire using American flags as tinder. And you see this, we have lots of footage where this is happening. And lots of people saying, here we have this from leftism, leftist rioter burns American flag in LA and says, my Mexican flag, green, white and red, that's my flag, not this flag, F this flag. I pledge allegiance to Mexico. Nobody.
Why are
else
you
in
there?
this country.
Why don't you just simply get up and go to Mexico? Because that's where the flag is flown. That's where your cultural heritage clearly is. That's where your desire to be is. It means no sense to me for you to burn an American flag in a country you don't want to be in that's not Mexican.
And there's also another dimension that the flag represents the nation, not the government. When you're burning a flag, you are committing a symbolic act against a nation, not necessarily against a government. Lots of people don't want to put forward this argument because they think that the government is necessarily organically connected to the nation. And sometimes we have governments that aren't particularly in favor of the interests of their nation and of promoting them.
Seems pretty much most of Western governments, to be honest.
Exactly. So we have here several footage. We have here footage, pardon me for the spelling. Everyone saw this, a burning vehicle here, and someone with the Mexican flag driving around, making circles. This definitely seems like Mad Max stuff. Law has broken down. We also have here people saying, again, being on top of burning cars. They've graffitied them saying Enolos.
I get a sense of deja vu. Wasn't I looking at pictures like this in Paris only a couple of weeks ago, where instead of using a Mexican flag, they had the flag of Palestine on it, which seems to have pretty similar colours on this.
And they were burning French flags.
Burning French flags to set fire to police vehicles and stopping people. And hang on, what's the connectivity between them?
The Coven.
Trying to really work this one out. Is it the fact they weren't born in that country and they just illegally came to that country or just settled in that country and now they're being caught, they're being deported? I don't know. I mean, call me old-fashioned. There's something there.
There's this belief that nations are interchangeable and identity is fundamentally interchangeable. as someone from Lebanon, I just know how false that is.
Yeah.
And what a ridiculous claim it is to make. But this is the official stated position of pretty much every Western government. And if you disagree with it, as you're going to tell us in a couple of moments, you're a terrorist. So there is this dynamic that's happening where reality is hitting ideology. The reality and ideology are clashing. And you're seeing reality assert itself in images like this.
And we need to also bear in mind the fact that the left is constantly carving up the population into several groups, and they're playing power politics with those groups, and they almost invariably support movements they consider to be revolutionary, within quotation marks, and they constantly are pro the disruptive force. Sometimes this has backfired to them massively, like in 1979 in Iran. Just saying, but leftists don't learn from their mistakes.
No.
They're ideologues, and when we're talking about ideologues, any clash between ideology and facts results to a situation that is so worse for the facts. Now let's move forward. We see yet again Mexican flags, people, and they've graffitied and vandalized a vehicle, and they say F ICE. Here we also have more flags, and we have a march here. Again, almost all of them are Mexican flags. You have lots of Mexican flags here.
Almost
if
all
you
of
see.
the people are Mexican by the looks of it. There we go.
Yes. So, looks like it's taking an ethnic dimension. Right, so several people are circulating this video with the Mexican president, Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo, allegedly urging Mexicans to protest in the United States, saying if necessary, we will mobilize. We don't want taxes on remittances from our fellow countrymen from the US to Mexico. There's an act of war, but bear this in mind. This may be quasi-misleading. Grok says here, the claim that President Sheinbaum urged Mexicans to protest in the US against a remittance tax is partially accurate but misleading. She called for mobilization against the tax, but this refers to political actions like lobbying and social media campaign, not physical protests. No evidence of protest in the US exists as of June 8, 2025. So take that with a pinch of salt when you see people talking about the president of Mexico here.
I think the important point to make about the president of Mexico is that when she was mayor of Mexico City, she prided herself on managing to reduce the number of murders in Mexico City. What happened was that the cartels began disappearing bodies rather than killing people and leaving their bodies, which led to a drop in the murder rate and a spike in the disappearance rate. So the cartels essentially were doing her a favor to help her spin a political narrative. The Americans have long suspected that her and her predecessor were connected to the cartels in some ways. And from my looking at what's been happening in Mexican politics, it seems to be pretty obvious that all kinds of senior politicians are in bed with the cartels. And so what Trump is doing is shutting down the money flows for the cartels, both in terms of people smuggling and drug smuggling.
Yeah.
And she is taking their sides. The tax on remittances is 3.5%, which is not a huge amount.
No.
And is intended to basically levy more money from people who are benefiting from being in the United States, who are often working illegally and untaxed. So her response that we will mobilize is interesting. They've also been saying that all Mexican consulates, and pretty much most major American cities have a Mexican consulate, will be used to help stop deportations. So they're using the power of the Mexican state for support of the Mexican people. But what this is confirming is that there is a conflict between the two sides.
I think there clearly is a conflict between Mexico and the United States. I mean, I think 3.5% personally as a fee is minuscule in a way that it's something that I think they're saying we're doing for the public. If they really wanted to do it, they did it into double figures, which has a real big impact when you're looking at currency transfer rates as well. You're suddenly moving up to regions of 20%. And then the second point of that is no doubt someone will have said, well, if we do put the tariff on so high it won't get paid, people will then start trying to do it in a kind of a money laundering way, which I think is fine. in a way. I mean, I'm not one for money laundering, but I think once you start putting it underground, it gives you the opportunity then to bring in more federal laws to hit them harder, and then you find out and identify the roots of these monies much more quickly and be able to find out who the bigwigs, because it's the money that matters. I've always said in law, follow the money. Always in politics, follow the money. And if Trump is following the money, then maybe we'll follow the money to those people in Mexico who are actually benefiting from all this crisis.
Yep.
Apart from following the money, he seems to be doing the sensible thing here. He deployed the National Guard, much to the dismay of Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris and various high-profile Democrats. So Kamala Harris made a statement here on what's happening in Los Angeles. She says, LA is my home, and like so many Americans, I'm appalled at what we're witnessing on the streets of our city. Deploying the National Guard is a dangerous escalation meant to provoke chaos. Excuse me, deploying the National Guard is a reaction to chaos. What is deplorable there is the chaos, not the deployment of the National Guard. It's the chaos and the very lukewarm reaction to that chaos on behalf of Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass, the mayor of LA. So Kamala Harris says this is a dangerous escalation. I think that this, in a way, that's true. It is an escalation, but it should be an escalation to end the chaos.
Yes.
But also, I really dislike the attempt to somehow portray this issue as a confrontation among equals, among equal parties. And we say we have two equal parties here. It seems like Trump is escalating. No. He should do what he did. Is absolutely correct in deploying the National Guard. It's obviously out of control. Everyone who's trying to claim that it isn't out of control seems to be lying.
It's true, and whenever I see anything from Kamala Harris, I always get that feeling in the stomach, just as you've got when you've got food poisoning. It's just that sense, isn't it?
And sometimes food poisoning lasts for a long time. She says also there, this administration's actions are not about public safety; they're about stoking fear. Again, this is manifestly false. This kind of anarcho-tyranny in LA is stoking fear.
Yeah, bear in mind stoking fear. To what I'm going to be talking about later.
Also, Gavin Newsom said the Secretary of Defense is now threatening to deploy active duty Marines on American soil against its own citizens. This is deranged behavior. First of all, it's not all of them are citizens. Mm-hmm. And also, what's deranged about it? If you were enforcing the law there and you ensured law and order, none of this would take place.
This is the fundamental point. What's sacred to the left is sentimentalism, not the written letter of the law. Western's culture, Western civilization is built on the idea that the sacred word is holy. Everything that traces back from Greek philosophy, Roman law, the Bible, this all rests on the idea of the importance of the written word and of the written law. For them, it's all about sentiment and feeling and wordplay. So what Kamala Harris said essentially is, this feels wrong, I don't like it. What Newsom is saying here is, this feels wrong, I don't like it. There's no nuance, there's no respect for the actual facts. This is the party that disregards reality as a matter of principle and elevates sentimentalism above law.
Exactly. They constantly ask for mercy. But I'm afraid my condition has completely left me cold to the pleas of mercy. We have here Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, I was going to say, but you've got here Gavin Newsom talking about the National Guard has been taken out of California's hand. On the one hand, Gavin, you turned around and said that there was nothing going on, nothing to see here, no demonstrations. Now you're saying don't give them an excuse to use violence against you. So the throwing of bricks, the burnings of cars, there was nothing to see.
Yes.
Well, if people don't want the military, or in this case, the National Guard, to push them, stop them from doing things, don't throw bricks, don't burn cars.
Also, it's like he's talking to his own side. Don't give them one. Yeah, I mean, are you on the side of law enforcement, or are you on the? They are not your side. They're not supposed to be your side.
No.
He says here the federal government is taking over the California National Guard and deploying 2,000 soldiers in LA, not because there's a shortage of law enforcement, but because they want a spectacle. Don't give them one. Never use violence. Speak out peacefully. Well, there are people using violence. There are people who don't speak out peacefully. Why haven't you done your job? Just basic question.
Remember when Xi Jinping was visiting San Francisco and then all of a sudden Newsom made it spotlessly clean and got rid of the homeless and got rid of the drug addicts and got rid of and sort of restored order for Xi's visit, and then he allowed the chaos back. So this is who they are. They are lying through their teeth constantly about what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And it's impossible to assume that this isn't conscious and deliberate and that this isn't part of the strategy. Legally, Trump has the right to declare an emergency and summon the National Guard. In normal situations, the National Guard obeys the governor, but the president has the right under the law to take command of the National Guard for domestic and foreign purposes.
Yep.
What Newsom is trying to do is to create a constitutional crisis on the back of this, to justify further escalation while lying about the narrative. So this isn't accidental. None of it is accidental. And even when you look at the riots themselves, you can see the social media pages of these rioters teaching how to set up barricades, how to identify police officers and find their identities,
Great
so that they can be targeted.
cocktails.
Yeah, so that they can then be targeted at home and so that their families can be attacked. You see them organizing in a very effective way, and there is this pretense that this is all organic and that it isn't organized. What they are doing is being the Sinn Féin to the IRA. They're spinning the political narrative for the people who are using the violence.
Right. So do you know Karen Bass? Who
Yes.
Karen Bass is?
Mayor
No.
of LA.
Well,
Mayor
allow
of
me
LA.
to break the ice. So,
Oh, well done.
so Karen Bass says here is the mayor of LA, and she says this is a difficult time for a city. We had the unprecedented natural disasters, reports of unrest outside the city. That's not exactly unrest, that's chaos, including in Paramount, are deeply concerning. We've been in direct contact with officials in Washington, D.C., and are working closely with law enforcement to find the best path forward. I mean, it's not exactly a debate what the best path forward is. You
You
reestablish-
either tolerate this and encourage it to grow,
Yes,
or you...
but she has a problem. She won't stand for the National Guard being deployed. She says, this morning we received reports of federal migration enforcement actions in multiple locations in LA. As mayor of a proud city of immigrants who contribute to our city in so many ways, I'm deeply angered by what has taken place. These tactics sow terror in our communities and disrupt basic principles of safety in our city. If you decry every kind of law enforcement as fascism, at some point people will stop listening to you because they won't have they won't be able to discern between what fascism is and what fascism is not. They will think invariably it's what you don't like, and that's just complete nonsense. And you know her. Sorry.
Go on.
No. You know some stuff about her because I think we should. There are some interesting things about her past. She was part of the Venceremos Brigade. That was an international socialist revolution group aimed at challenging U.S. policies towards Cuba. Have made their way back to the spotlights after they were revealed just months back during the city's disastrous wildfires. She previously praised Fidel Castro and had close associations with the Caribbean country in her youth, traveling there in 1973 with Venceremos Brigade and seeing the communist leader speak. And when Castro died, she referred to him as Comandante en Jefe, Commander-in-Chief, saying his passing was a great loss to the people of Cuba. She also reportedly gave a eulogy for a senior member of the Communist Party, USA. Right, so one thing, communism has led invariably to poverty. When you have poverty, you have huge migration flows. Look at Cuba, look at Venezuela, and that's actually making the problem worse. So if you care about migrants, you presumably have to care about the conditions at their home and not support communists who are making people poor and who make them actually try to migrate. Right. So Gavin Newsom also requested the Trump administration to rescind the unlawful deployment of troops in Los Angeles County and return them to his command. He says, we didn't have a problem until Trump got involved. It looks like you did have a major problem.
I mean, if
Looks
any
like you
law
did.
enforcement action results in riots, then you clearly have a problem.
He says this is a serious breach of state sovereignty, inflaming tensions while pulling resources from where they're actually needed. Rescind the order, return control to California. Control has been lost in California, but not because of Trump and the deployment of the National Guard.
And if
Control has been lost because the state hasn't done its job. And not because the people who are involved in law enforcement are bad, they're not. Because they have orders from Democrats not to.
So he has 2,000 National Guard, which he didn't use. So that was a resource that was not being used anywhere. So why did he say those resources were needed somewhere else? So where was he going to put them? He wasn't going to put them anywhere. So he's making a lie even that last sentence. It's just blatant lies.
Yes.
And he's blaming Trump for it. He says he manufactured the crisis and is inflaming conditions.
Well, the crisis was the border crisis. He didn't manufacture that. He's trying to solve the border crisis. And within the border crisis is now that others are trying to prevent that border crisis problem being solved by those who have the authority to do that, which is the police in terms of ICE. So I don't see how they can be creating the problem.
The left is constantly disrupting civilization, and then everyone who tries to address these issues is denounced as an evil person who is actually responsible from the problem in the first place. It is a complete inversion of reality. I hope there aren't going to be any victims there. It looks like it's incredibly violent, and it looks like there are lots of fanatical people who are interested in continuing their violence. I really hope order is restored, and there is as little damage as possible.
And as few casualties as possible.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.